The Neil Diamond Musical, A Beautiful Noise, the uplifting true story, featuring all the songs you love from his Grammy Award-winning career. October 21st through 26th at Des Moines Civic Center. On sale at dmpa.org.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of The Beat Reporters. I'm Jake Brend, joined by Rob Gray and Ben Hutchens. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good to be with you, Jake.
Yes.
Old Ben aboard here.
Yeah. How about this, man? Nice studio, good people. Cycling Fanatic. Love what you guys do and happy to be a part of it.
All over jet lag, I think, for now. We'll see in a day or two, but I figured it'd probably be best to introduce Ben to some Cyclone Fanatics.
Sure.
I'm guessing every Cyclone Fanatic fan or fanatic has read Rob before on our site. I'd hope so. We bring Ben over from the Quad City Times. He's been on the beat for about a year now. Is that
coming up on a year? Yep.
Coming up on a year. So Ben does great work, and just tell us a little bit about yourself, Ben.
I was kind of getting flamed on Twitter today because I posted, just by my buddies, so you can't really call it flaming. But I posted, hey, here's 18 thoughts from an Iowan, on his trip to Dublin. And it's like, well, can you really call yourself an Iowan if you've been here for less than a year? But I can.
Have you had sweet corn?
I have.
So yeah, you're an Iowan.
And the smackaroos, is that what they're called? Scotcheroos. Yeah. So that I mean, after that, for sure. But really, as Cyclone fans, like, you guys just need to know that I'm a Big 12 guy. I went to Oklahoma State University. I really think that Oklahoma State people and Iowa State people are similar, man. There's not a lot of differences between these two communities, which has made working here a lot of fun. And spent time in, born in Kansas, moved to Texas, Oklahoma. I've really lived along I-35 my whole life, right in Big 12 country. So it's been a lot of fun up here.
Well, we're glad to have you. It's going to be fun. It'll be a good dynamic because Rob, he's been around this longer than we have, and definitely has way more perspective in a historical sense. I grew up a fan, so I try to be as unbiased as possible, and I try to be objective. But when you're a fan, that can't always happen. And Ben is the true down the middle. I mean, when you're covering a team, winning is good for business. That's just how it is. But Ben is it'll be a good dynamic between.
He's the outsider / insider because he comes completely from, in Big 12 country, a completely different place.
Absolutely.
Locale. I wanted to add about Ben too in the Quad City Times. You guys still, as Lee, he can be read, I think, in Mason City, Waterloo, a number of Lee papers, right? Not just in Quad Cities, right?
Yeah, for sure. So we got Quad City Times. I'm also writing for the Waterloo Cedar Falls Courier out in Sioux City as well. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different places across Iowa you can find my work, and it's all good stuff, man. Go check it out. And just, I think a lot of Cyclone fans who go to Cyclone Fanatic already kind of see me there too. But yeah, a few different papers with the Lee Enterprises Network.
Quick shout out to the Gazette, who I also work for.
Oh, yeah.
Very proud to be a part of that organization. Proudest, of course, to be a part of CF.
We love it. Well, another person a part of CF is Kelderman Manufacturing, Jeff Kelderman. Aiden, he's here. He's still sleep deprived because he spent the entire weekend with Kelderman out in Vegas. Aiden is our awesome producer. He'll be producing the show. Kelderman Manufacturing, he can do anything to your car from. I don't have a car that would be Kelderman worthy, but if you got a big truck, take it on down to Kelderman. Signage, we're like, as you can tell, the studio is mostly done, but it's only 95% done. The 5% to go, we're going to have some Kelderman signage up around here. So go and hit up Kelderman down in Oskaloosa for any of your manufacturing needs. We've just got about 5 topics that we're going to hit today. This will be a show where we just talk a lot of ball. We talk a lot of what comes from the press conferences, and it's probably best to tie these two topics together, between South Dakota being not only a trap game, but the team could be dealing with some potential jet lag in practice. I guess from what you guys have heard from Campbell, what you guys have heard from inside the program, do you think that there is a chance that South Dakota's overlooked, or it seems to me that Campbell's pretty prepared for that.
He told me back in May, Matt Campbell did, at one of the Cyclone Tour stops, I think the Ankeny one, that he was more concerned with the trip back than he was getting his guys up and ready to play for a trip there. Who doesn't want to play a Farmageddon game in Dublin? Yeah. Sorry, can I say Farmageddon?
I think so. I think that's been all sorted out. I think there's some, just like in anything else now, there's dispute. The veracity of the original claim is coming from the mothership.
We'll say it on our show, but I don't think overlooked is the word here at all, because, Campbell has been thinking about this trip back since May. And we heard him talk to Nick Sirianni and Mike Vrabel and Marcus Freeman about how to handle this trip. And you guys talked to the guys, like, they seem alert and awake. And, we think Iowa State's going to handle this pretty well. But there are inherent downsides to playing in this game. And that is, we see in the recent sample size, in the years since COVID, when the Aer Lingus Classic has kind of resumed, I put together the list of how has Nebraska done, how has Northwestern done, Notre Dame, Navy, Georgia Tech, and Florida State. The teams to have played in this game, what do they do coming back? And guys, you would not believe, maybe you would considering that lineup, but it is tough. I think these numbers would get any coach fired. Listen to this. First game back, 4-2, 9-15 in the next 4. So the month after. And total season after beginning a game in Ireland, 29-45. Those are numbers that would get any coach fired.
Wow.
Who had the best record? Probably Notre Dame.
Notre Dame that one year.
Because we saw how Florida State fell off the map last season after feeling snubbed with the undefeated regular season the previous season, and then just all the wheels coming off last season, post-Dublin, pre-Dublin, everything. But I guess what I would say is great stats, by the way, Ben. And also, you're right. I mean, Campbell is obsessive about things in a good way. He's not going to leave any stone unturned. And all the guys said that, it was about, and I was at that gathering too, more concerned about, what comes next, not only this week, but they cut it into this first quarter of games, right? Because then you have the big Cy-Hawk rivalry with Fox, all the big Fox afternoon shows, late morning afternoon shows being there. And of course, a weird, tricky game at Arkansas State where they've always got talent. Sun Belt, they always bite some teams in the Power Four. So that's part of the whole picture. And I think Campbell's focused on it. I think the players have stayed focused on it. They say all the right things, even though this South Dakota team lost a lot of guys. They're rebuilding it with transfers. It's interesting to see FCS team do that, kind of like FBS teams do with a handful of guys from lower and upper, and saw some guys go to FBS. But you got a star quarterback in Aiden Bowman, who Iowa State is well familiar with him, being 2 years here behind Brock Purdy and I guess other guys. And their running back is really good, coming off of almost 1,300 yards, 16 touchdown season on the ground. So they got stars. Just do they have any depth? And 5th ranked preseason FCS based on a semifinal appearance last season. So certainly they're going to say all the right things about facing South Dakota because they have become a power after transitioning up into the FCS ranks.
Yeah, I've just got a couple thoughts coming off of that. So my first would be the struggles coming back from Ireland. I'd be curious to see what the correlation would be between, was that a average team that struggled, or was that a bad team that was bad?
Yeah.
And that, I'm guessing, we'll know more in a decade. We'll definitely know more after this year. If K-State is a 9-10 win team still in my book, even with a week 1 loss. But if for some reason they somehow win 6 games or win 7 games, I believe I read that there hasn't been a team that's lost this game that's made a bowl game.
Wow.
I mean, K-State has to end that trend. I would agree. I would be absolutely shocked. But I'm interested to see how much of that correlation is causation. And
look at the teams, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Nebraska, Northwestern that year, how many more games did Nebraska win? How many more games did Northwestern win?
Frost got fired 2 weeks after they lost to Georgia Southern.
Yeah. Northwestern won 1 game that season.
Yeah.
They won the early
That's right. I couldn't remember if it was 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So I'm really interested to see. I do think there's definitely some correlation, especially when you look at the losing side of it. You start the year, It's what we've talked about all summer. You start the year on the biggest stage. Everybody's watching you. You already are at somewhat of a disadvantage rest-wise. You're coming back to play week 1. That's all there. And if you lose that game on the biggest stage and it just sucks the air out of everything, that's where I do think K-State could be hurt. I still think highly of Chris Kleiman. I think they're going to go out, bounce back against North Dakota, probably beat Army, beat Arizona. But it is interesting to look at how bad that is, because that's a 5-year sample size of teams really, really struggling.
I was going to say, I would be utterly shocked if Kansas State did not still have now how successful by their standards, right? Because all the rumblings after that game was that I saw online and even around some of the K-State fans there, who were admittedly probably having a better time because they were in Dublin partying with other people, but they said this loss is on Kleiman, and it wasn't just a 4th down and long one at the 30, but other things they thought he said. But I mean, they just got too much talent on both sides of the ball. You got Austin Romaine at linebacker, you got Payne on the back end, you got a good defensive front, rebuild offensive line that's going to get better. I mean, that's a team that's going to rebound. And Iowa State, what I said before the game is, it's kind of cliche, but in this instance, not quite as much, that a win is huge and a loss is not good, but it's not. The win goes from here to here and the loss goes from here to here.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because the Big 12 went down to the final weekend, 5 teams at least having the chance to play in that title game. I'd expect a repeat of that this season, given how deep the league is. And so a week 0 loss. Does it help that they have company too? I mean, Kansas had the opener against Fresno State, because haven't some of those week 0s been truly, that's the only game at the FBS level being played? I'm not sure. Usually
there's not any other games that are important. Or I don't remember a lot.
There might be some FCS games or D2 games. Or, yeah.
The other thing that I think of is, I have no doubt that Matt Campbell is going to be ready. I have no doubt the team will be ready. The team is not thinking constantly about Iowa, but there is the human nature side of it. We were all there. It is impossible to replicate what that pregame atmosphere was in Ireland, and it's impossible to replicate the first game of the year jitters and excitement. That is where my concern would maybe rest, would be like how different are those emotions compared to opening the season in front of 4 million people and the Cy-Hawk game, which is always the best atmosphere in the state, no matter what. Again, it's going to be a sold out Jack Trice Stadium, running out of the tunnel for the first time. That could offset it. But if there is a sense of a trap game, that's where I think it would come from. What do you guys think about that?
Those elements that you just brought up, the rivalry aspect of it, the opening in Dublin aspect of it, all of these things that maybe don't translate to ESPN, power rankings, are what made Matt Campbell tell us in Ireland, I think Iowa State has the most difficult schedule in college football this year. I almost like that hit me. I was like, he really just said that Iowa State has the most difficult schedule in college football. And, there's going to be the SEC people who say, hey, ESPN's, FPI analytics say the top 8 most difficult schedules are with SEC teams. And I think it's 13 of the top 14. But I think coaches look at this a little bit differently and have a different perspective, as my contact is messing me up here. Coaches don't look at ESPN FPI analytics. They think of what does it take to get guys prepared. And the rivalry aspects of it, the travel aspects, are what made Campbell say that Iowa State, a team in the Big 12, has the most difficult schedule in the country this year. I couldn't believe that quote.
Yeah, and I don't think it's the toughest schedule in the country, but I did understand what he was saying. He probably could have taken a little bit off of it in calling, like, South Dakota is a great team. They're a national semifinalist. I think South Dakota is a really good team. I think they're a really, really good FCS program that would probably finish middle of the pack in the MAC, if I had to guess, somewhere in that range. But to start with the toughest schedule in the country, I do think it...
And set up to fail.
Yeah. I think that makes...
He's talking to his team as much as he's talking to us and the public.
Yeah, I do think that makes the quote a little less... What would be the term? A little... you take it a little less seriously. If you came out and said, I think this is the toughest schedule we've ever played at Iowa State, and then you go through like, we've got to play this high-level FCS team, then Iowa. Oh, yeah, and we're recovering from jet lag, and then we got to go on the road to a group of 5 team. I do think I understand what he was saying. I probably didn't agree with the verbiage because the SEC schools of the world, Iowa fans, all the other are going to be like, it's not the toughest schedule, and they've got a pretty good argument why it's not.
Well, I mean, Phil Steele did a top 100, and Iowa State was 35th, which, still is something. I think every coach, I addressed this in my follow-up story I was writing. I can't remember. What's fun is I'll have Mark's time pegs to what I was doing and where I was in Ireland when I was writing. And that's a fun memory. But just kind of like, I was kind of said, forgive Coach Campbell for his bias. I think every coach is going to say they've got the toughest road. Every coach is going to say that the odds are stacked against us, right? Because that's how you get that chip on the shoulder.
Yeah.
That Iowa State milks as much as any program in the country. I mean, Jeremiah Cooper said, he had a big chip on his shoulder from K-State last season. A game they won, a huge game that they won, but he said he thought he played one of his worst games. Coach Campbell says last Saturday played one of his best, first game at corner. So we're getting in a little bit of the motivational game and all of that. But I think in Campbell's mind, because he's got to have that tunnel vision, he's got to think about what his players are receiving, not out here, but from him. Just, guys, you can't take, these are talented players over here. I don't care if they plucked him from D2 or another FCS team or a guy who hasn't played in an FCS program. When you can be, I think they're coming up back-to-back 10 or 10 plus win seasons. It's a program that wasn't D2 that long ago. So they built something in South Dakota, and they're going to have the talent to come in and give the Cyclones a problem if they even remotely think about being flat or going through the motions.
Yeah, you definitely wish it was Southeast Missouri State and not, or Albany. Like it is a misconception. I know they were talking about, Williams and Hassel were talking about that on Two Guys over on Iowa Everywhere, that there is a difference between FCS programs. Yes. Like when you play college football, EA Sports college football, and it's just FCS Midwest, FCS East, FCS South. That's not very accurate. There is a massive difference between those top 6 or 7 FCS programs down to the rest of them.
Yep.
Because these, and that's what you also look at. These programs are South Dakota, South Dakota State. Those are Iowa and Iowa State in those states. Montana State. That's Ohio State and Michigan in those states.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the same level of resources, but the people in those states, they're putting their resources to benefit the Montana State NIL, the South Dakota NIL. They're not sharing it like poor UNI. Poor UNI has to share, not literally poor UNI, but you feel bad for UNI because they're in a state that they've got to share with the big Power 5 schools. And that's where it's way off topic, but these specifically upper Midwest FCS schools have an advantage over the rest of the FCS schools.
Well, SDSU, of course, is a big share for USD, but again, it's a state without an FBS program.
Yes.
Like you said, and Montana's a big one. Had been before Montana State's back up. They kind of seem to go back and forth among FCS powers. But yeah, totally different thing. And I think a really good point to make because, they all pluck from some of the overlooked people in Florida, California, and Texas as well. I remember when I was covering UNI, the Benny Sapps of the world, some guys that really saw some time in the league and good time in the league that just couldn't catch on at, I guess then it was just the 1A level, Division 1A level. All those guys are hungry. And I did see the Aiden Bowman, one of the things he said when they called it a surprise return for a 6th season, with obviously the red shirt, the COVID year, is he called it, again, not unique, but he said he had unfinished business. I'm sure he wasn't just talking about week 1 against a team he couldn't climb the depth chart with for 2 seasons. I think for good reason with Brock Purdy at the top and win the program. But nonetheless, as Jeremiah Cooper told us, if you put yourself in his shoes, or told the reporters, I was still on my way back. I was in Detroit. But a point made. You put yourself in his shoes, you're going to want to go in and beat that team. Even if the good feeling feeling good. Campbell talked about how much they love him, love the family. I think there's no ill will. At the same time, you told me I wasn't good enough to play. Look at me now, 49 touchdowns and 11 interceptions later in 2+ seasons as a starter. At the FCS level, certainly, but that translates to a good degree. And he's going to be ready to go. It's just a matter of, like I said, depth, I think, for that team.
Why do you think college coaches everywhere are hesitant to schedule, mid-major and FCS opponents in state? Because those are all the players who, for all these variety of reasons were overlooked and, have a little bit of a psychological motive to go out there and prove it to somebody.
Yeah, we know it all too well in this state. UNI has jumped up, beat Iowa State a couple times. UNI almost beat Iowa.
Yep.
Probably the best Iowa team of this century.
Iowa
had to block a field goal at the end of the game to beat UNI. And that Iowa team went on to destroy Georgia Tech in the Orange Bowl. We've seen plenty of UNI teams that are David Johnson.
Yep.
One of the greatest fantasy football running backs of all time.
When healthy.
He got a preferred walk-on from Iowa State, and Paul Rhodes didn't spell his name right, and he went on to UNI. And
there's no way that's the story. I'm sorry to interrupt. That's a piece of Iowa State lore I haven't heard.
Let's say maybe it was whoever was doing.
Maybe not Paul Rhodes. Someone from the staff misspelled David Johnson on his recruiting letter, and he went off to UNI and then beat Iowa State.
Wow.
That's still wild. David Johnson. The assumption is like it looks, like it sounds, right? But
either way,
weird, wild stuff happens.
Either way, that is a factor with the quarterback coming from South Dakota, Aiden Bauman. I do wonder if there's the other side of the coin. Is there too much of a chip on your shoulder? Mm-hmm. Can you sometimes get a little hero ball and I got to go out and prove something? And maybe you are being more aggressive, making reads you wouldn't otherwise make. Yep. I haven't been locked completely into South Dakota football the last few years. I watched the playoffs and stuff like that. So I don't know his game well enough to make that judgment, but that is something I would think about of sometimes if you have too much of I'm going to go prove you wrong, that could benefit the Power 5 defense.
Yeah.
No doubt. I mean, you've seen it go either way a number of different places, right? Where guys come in, they're just so gung-ho, they just can't perform and it's a disaster. But I don't think this would be the case with Bowman. Again, because of the good feelings, I think on both sides of it, I think it's just a point of pride, right? I'm better than you thought I was. Probably kind of understand why you didn't give me a chance to show it, given who I was behind in the situation. But I'm going to prove it to you a little bit here. I want to come back and really, beat the hand that I was once, going all in with.
So we'll move on. We've got a few more topics, but I was thinking about this what if this morning when I was doing the Daily Clone talking about Bowman. So we all know the gambling sting that knocked Hunter Deckers out of NCAA football. And I was just thinking about the timing of that set up Rocco Becht, of course, to be the quarterback. Bauman transferred because it was understood that Deckers was the next guy after Brock Purdy. What if the gambling thing happened at a different time? Like, what if it so happened at a time where Bauman was still in the program and he's the next guy? And I was just thinking about that what if. Obviously, there's no way to ever know, but I was thinking about that alternate universe because Deckers was dinged for betting while Bauman was in the program. Allegedly, if that investigation happened a year earlier or a year and 2 months earlier, like what does that world look like where Bauman could be starting for Iowa State against South Dakota right now in this game?
Yeah, that's a wild scenario. You're bringing a little sci-fi element to our
Sorry, we
broadcast.
Probably don't need it.
That's all right. I mean, it is. I mean, it just goes to show what is, also cliche, but you get that opportunity to make the most of it. And Bauman, it could have been I think he could have done very well at the FBS level. Mm-hmm. I think he could have been a very good quarterback for Iowa State. But again, as it shook out, Deckers turned out to be a really good quarterback that one season. as well. And then Rocco's done what Rocco's done, breaking a good amount of Purdy's records, who still holds far more. But yeah, it's wild to think about. And I guess glad I'm not involved with with anybody who was in the whole conversation at the time.
Yeah, it just adds perspective that, like, Rocco, seeing what he did Saturday, it was never really expected, at least from us in the media, it was or the fan base, that he was this next guy. It was never expected that he would take the torch from Brock Purdy, and you have to think about all that happened for him to get that shot. It is kind of just crazy to put that into perspective.
With the hypothetical scenario that you brought up, Jake, I mean, maybe Rocco Becht doesn't have 24 starts under his belt by the time he, begins his junior year. Maybe he's not so nails in the fourth quarter with all that experience you had. I mean, it's crazy to think that he's so experienced and he's just a junior. Like a lot of guys, this is the first time they become the starter as, their junior year.
Yeah. And I mean, Rocco too, I mean, I always thought that, does he have the prototypical size? No, in terms of height. But when your dad played several seasons in the NFL as a tight end and a successful tight end, and he's gone into coaching, and you're raised by him, but you're also in Florida. You've been coming up through the ranks, playing with Xavier Townsend and all those guys. He now joined him. I mean, I think the pedigree was obvious. But again, as Campbell says about everything, you've got to quote unquote prove it. And he didn't. I mean, I think he proved it pretty well right away. But think about the alternatives. I mean, Campbell said one of the times he first learned that Rocco Becht was going to be the type of player he is when he's puking his guts out in the Ohio loss. One of the lowest points, I would say, for the fan base in the Matt Campbell era, now in his 10th season. Couldn't score a touchdown at Ohio. And then you find out, he didn't think Rocco Becht would even be able to play in the second half because he was just puking so much. And Becht more or less said, "I'm playing, coach." Campbell went, all right, we got something.
And for as many bad things that happened that day, it wasn't really Rocco. And that's probably, if we got to go way back.
Was he great? But was he great? But also he was puking his guts out. I mean, it just speaks of his guts. Yeah. And I think that game, hypotheticals, this is the last one I'll throw out. Now that we're in the hypothetical, we're swinging at them.
That's what you're going to get here on
a lot of
reporters.
Hypotheticals, some sci-fi thing. No, but what if they don't lose that game? What if they win it 10-3? That lit a huge fire under that team. And look at what they went on to do with the big wins and really setting the stage for where the program is on the up. Because boy, talk about rocky shores and stormy seas, the 2023 season, the way it was with all the one-score losses, the gambling stuff before it. Got a PR hit. You have a 4-8 season. New court, a lot of things to navigate. I think that's why Campbell brings up 2020-23 a lot, about the guys who are still here from that and what they went through, informing what they do, going on to a record 11 wins last season. But now they've won 2 straight top 20 games for the first time in, what'd they say? It was early 70s?
Yeah, long time.
It's wild to think about all the things, the injuries last season, all the things they've overcome to get to where they are, and yet they're still 1-0 and facing a team that we're talking about could be a trap, and it's true.
So another thing, you already mentioned it earlier, was Jeremiah Cooper, and mentioning how he had a massive chip on his shoulder, not only for the K-State game last year, but he's also talked quite a bit about this season, about how he didn't feel like he played his best football last year, and definitely took a step back from his first team All Big 12 season a couple of years ago. Now he's moved over to cornerback. It was a secret that we'd all heard and we thought was true, but we didn't know if it was going to be, are they just going to throw him out there for a series? No, he's at cornerback. There's a shot they might throw him at safety in some packages, but he is the cornerback outside of, or opposite of, Jontez Williams. I thought what Campbell and Haycock had to say about it yesterday was fascinating, saying that it's almost more about the depth that they have at safety and a need at corner, and then the selflessness for Cooper to move over there. I watching it in one game, I think it's a really good move so far, watching the physicality that he brought from his roaming safety role over to cornerback. I honestly think it's a match made in heaven.
That's what stuck with me. I rewatched the film and even live. I mean,
he popped.
You could see his physicality, his playmaking. I thought all of Iowa State's secondary was getting downhill and really stopping the Kansas State run. And it's easy to do that when, Orange takes up 3 guys in the middle. But I thought the entire secondary did a great job of getting downhill. One thing about Cooper's stats, I was curious, he played 48 snaps against Kansas State. 24 of them were in run defense and 24 of them he was covering. So it is truly a, split versatility with Cooper where you feel good with throwing him out there at any position. He's capable of striking guys in the run game and dropping back in defending. You could put him anywhere. And to Jake's point, I mean, to have a guy who's voted all conference player in the preseason coming in for his senior year, he wants to put tape on, film to go to the NFL. To ask him to change positions and for him to be willing to do that says a lot about him. For sure.
And I think with him, that group is, I thought the linebackers, I know that's talked about a lot on Williams and Bloom and some of the other pods, but they were outstanding. The speed and the power and the physicalness they played with was something. And Ike Ezeagu up front, we know Dom, what he does. Need to see a little bit more, I think, from some of the other defensive linemen, but the back 7, I thought were tremendous outside of the couple hiccups on the big pass plays, which Coach Haycock said were just young guys being out there. It's going to happen. But, how high they are on Cummings, Coleman, and Van Ginter, I mean, they looked great most of the time out there. And that's obviously another reason they go. And what a selling point to Cooper. I mean, what a selling point Darian Porter gives to everyone on this team, given if you've got the chops, if you're willing to work hard enough. Now, granted, Porter's a freak athlete, but most of these guys are if they're playing FBS college football. So corner's a prized position in the NFL. You're going to be one of the top. If you're a really good corner over a really good safety, they'll take a really good corner first. Not the safety's far behind, but I mean, so maybe somewhat of an easy sell, but when you've been first team all conference and honorable mention on conference in a season you didn't think you played well, it's pretty easy. You could just resist and be like, hey, I've really got to, all I can do, I can get so much better here again and be first team again. And that's good enough. So definitely like you said, a selfless thing for him to do with the caveat that, hey, there is more high-end potential on the other end of college football.
Yeah, the other area, sorry, Ben.
No, you're good.
The other area is psychologically for the opposing quarterback. One of my biggest concerns all offseason heading in was, quarterbacks are not going to attack Jontez Williams. I think really the only times Jontez was thrown at, it was short routes against really, really soft zone. Yeah. They're not going to attack Jontez downfield, which means whoever's the cornerback opposite is going to be tested. And when you know that Jeremiah Cooper is over there, who had 5 interceptions as a sophomore, the quarterbacks might be hesitating a little bit to throw against another. I mean, you have your 2 best defensive backs in the corners. That, I think, makes it really, really challenging for an opposing quarterback.
And when we asked Campbell about Cooper's switch into corner, why'd you do it? The aspect that I didn't think about that Campbell clearly had is he'd rather have Cooper's ability to communicate on the outside of Iowa State's defense. He said when you have Jontez Williams and Jeremiah Cooper on the outside of the field, it allows the communication to spread throughout the entire defense. And he said it gives your entire 11 such confidence when everybody's on the same page, everybody knows what's going on. That was an aspect that I hadn't thought of, is he'd rather have the senior veteran communicators on the outside of the defense.
And there's also Trey Bell. Like he
looked really good.
I thought Bell had a really good game. Really so when you can platoon him, and if you want to give Jontez and Cooper 10 snaps off a game, you just throw Bell in there for 20, 25 snaps, and he'll be opposite of one of those guys, which I think really works too.
No question. I wanted to mention how good he looked too, not just there, but on special teams. I mean, I thought it wasn't a topic, but I thought I would say special teams outside of the bad hit by Connery and bad conditions, the first half missed field goal. That wasn't a gimme by any means. I thought special teams was spectacular.
Bad snap as well when I watched back.
But I mean, he hit the one that proved to be, the winning margin too. And I mean, how many times have we seen that from him, going back to the splash moment against Iowa last season. So I thought that's worth mentioning how good, especially the punt coverage, the kick coverage was on special teams. And that bodes well, of course, for this week and beyond.
Yeah, we're not on bigger than 12 right now, but the Kansas State special teams, it just blows my mind. That feels like something that K-State would be incredible at.
And they have been historically, certainly.
They have been bad the last 2 or 3 years. So this is not a K-State podcast. Is any other topics like X's and O's you guys want to hit before we start talking about the color black?
I don't know. I think it was discussed on Williams and Bloom, but I found it interesting, again, from Detroit, to listen to the audio, and thanks for putting it in so I could
you got it.
So I could work from there. Jeff Campbell talked about how the team grew in each quarter of the game. I mean, they're at the point now where the fine tuning is they're segmenting everything. And I think that's really good from a mental standpoint. I think it's one thing that helps you avoid even conceptually falling into a trap, even the concept of a trap game, because they're looking at everything in such small pieces. You can't look ahead because here's the next piece, here's the next piece, here's the next piece. So I think we can all say in the first half, the offensive line looked like it couldn't block. But then again, how much of it was the way K-State with its new front four versus front three that they'd been used to playing was a difference. And then as the game wore on, you saw huge holes. First, Sama started to click a little bit, and then Hansen, I think, as Campbell said, was kind of like the closer, the home run hitter in the fourth quarter. And I think that it should continue. I think Sama's done enough, and I think Hansen clearly is the lead guy at this point, but with a good mix of Sama and maybe a handful for other guys as well.
Yeah.
Rob always asks about a single play that kind of defined the game or defined a bigger aspect. And the moment I looked up and kind of thought that play, maybe you could probably figure it out. I don't know. It was when on third down, Kel Brzezina gets hurt late in the game in the fourth quarter. We can talk about that rule another time. That's going to be an interesting thing to see how the Big 12 and college football handles that. Iowa State loses a linebacker, which last year, guys, would have just been,
the end of the game.
Yeah. It's like the end of the game. Seriously.
Hutchens, grab a jersey. You're checking in.
Yeah, 140. The Iowa State Cyclones are in a situation this year where they can go bring in Carson Willick.
Yep.
And Carson Willick was the guy who made a nice hit.
Excellent game.
To bring up the fourth down that the Cyclones got, what I think was the biggest point in the game, where they stopped Avery Johnson.
Jamison Patton.
Jamo and Ebel, I think both are credited with that tackle. I mean, I agree. That was one in the moment that I was just like, wow, Carson Willick. I was so in the moment, I thought it was Willick that made the next play. Then I was like, oh, I got to go back and say, no, Jamo and Ebel in there. But great point. So that was a moment that certainly felt like one of those aha moments. Adversity turned into something positive.
Yeah, that's the payoff from what Iowa State went through last year. Right.
100%. And like Bo Goodwin, he was Iowa State's highest graded linebacker on Pro Football Focus. I think he played 12 snaps. So it's like, you don't want Kel Brzezina to go down, or you don't want Will McLaughlin, who is ahead of Goodwin, to go down. You don't want any of that. Yeah. But who you have sitting behind him is Goodwin, who played 20% of the game. Or
and got so much experience last season because of so many injuries.
Zach Lovett didn't play a ton on Saturday. So you're in this spot not only for injury's sake, but from a freshness sake. And Cooper Ebel told me, my guy Cooper, I've gotten to know him pretty well dating back to Okoboji, but he said that was easily the most fresh he's ever felt. And I can see why. They rolled out 7 guys who all played at least 10 snaps. And of course, Bacon played about 75% of the game, and Ebel and Willick both also played at least 30 snaps. But other than that, you have McLaughlin, who's a starter, played a ton of football. You had Goodwin, Lovett. Like there's a Brzezina, there's a lot of guys out there who I'm sure they'll have their Carson Willick game where they play 40 snaps, and even if they're only averaging like 15, 20 a game. Mm-hmm. So it's a big aspect going forward, especially for what Iowa State asks from those guys at that position. And that's not even factoring in special teams. A lot of those guys are going to play a role on special teams as well. Absolutely. If not them, the Ryland Barnes, the maybe the 8, 9, 10 guys in that rotation.
Yeah, probably popped the most too. I mean, Goodwin, that's where he might go back to Mike Rose. How does Mike Rose get on the field as a freshman? He's a great special teams player, and he becomes who he becomes. So that's a tried and true method in any program, but I think they put a higher emphasis on it at Iowa State. Unfortunately, sometimes we put that high emphasis on it. It means that your up-and-coming star linebacker like Caleb Bacon gets hurt a handful of plays into last season opener, but that stuff doesn't usually happen. You take the overall weight of what it's meant for them to play a lot of guys on special teams that sometimes are starters. I think it's overall cost-benefit analysis really benefited Iowa State for sure.
100%. So, Rob, you had a big moment on Saturday because you asked Matt Campbell the most pressing question.
I was asked
of the week.
Ask Matt Campbell.
I believe Aiden Wyatt has the clip. I'm sure you've heard it now, but if you haven't, please watch.
I was just giving the option of if you could go in and score. So that's
Hey, nobody asked me a question. Hey, I'm going to finish with this. Now, Rob, you got to ask me a question about the color black. Because I heard their athletic director made a comment about the color black. Could you give us a question about why Iowa State wears black?
Yeah, why is it?
Rob, we don't really care what color we wear, okay? Like, it's never been about a jersey color for us. It's never been about any of that. It's been about team, togetherness, and playing winning football. So I appreciate the question. Go Cyclones. All right. Good. I forgot about it. Thank you, guys.
Well, Rob, you definitely rose to the occasion. You were in a big spot there. You delivered.
Well, I appreciate Coach Campbell giving me the opportunity. Unexpected opportunity. I think I was just kind of like, okay, Rob, you gave me the answer, and I just said, so yeah. I can't remember what exactly I said, but it was a really good question, I thought, because it gave him a chance to deliver that answer in response. People, I love how social media is just so great. I'm glad I was born without it, and spent a bunch of my adult life without it. But to see people angry, let's see a little outrage here. Oh, that's embarrassing. Coach is having fun there. People think it's like, oh, he actually was aggrieved and angry that Kansas State's AD Gene Taylor made one of those common digs that you don't really know your team. We know our team colors, maybe they don't. I thought that was just a really fun moment. To go for what Cyclone fans and, of course, players, coaches was a really fun day and night in Dublin, for sure.
And for some added context, that Gene Taylor comment came at the Kansas State pep rally, which was right before. And for the thousands of Iowa State fans, and literally thousands of them that showed up to the ISU pep rally, I mean, it's a celebratory atmosphere. John Walters is up there, cracking jokes, not at K-State's expense necessarily, but keeping it light. And, it's kind of an atmosphere you would expect to hear that. But the thing that struck me is like, I'd never seen Matt Campbell that spicy in a press conference. I'd never seen that before.
You don't see him not break character, because that right there is who Matt Campbell is, but more so break podium Campbell persona would be the better term.
He has a character that he plays when he's on stage at the podium. He's a very different person when you talk to him one-on-one. And I've had good fortune of being able to do that since day one, to get to know Matt a little bit better. But it was funny to see that spill in. And we've seen it in fits and starts, little glimpses. But in that moment where Rocco's answering a question, I asked him, and then you just see Rocco start smelling. One of the funniest things I saw when I watched the video, I didn't notice it before, it was like Bacon was kind of looked like he was mildly amused, but just kind of had a little bit like, oh, what was that? Kind of look on his face too. So definitely a memorable and in my mind, a fun moment after that big win for Iowa State.
Yeah, I'll never forget that. Because it was so unexpected.
Yeah.
Avery Johnson having an intentional grounding was not that unexpected for me. Iowa State winning the game, I predicted them to lose, but it's not like 2017 Oklahoma where I'm so shocked.
Yeah.
There was really nothing in that game that was like, oh my gosh, how did that happen? Easily the most surprising moment of that entire trip was Matt Campbell storming back into a press conference. I would have never, in my wildest expectations, even came close to predicting that. So that will live in infamy for a long, long time.
Do you have to do any picks? Do you have to do like a weekly pick to go with your analysis of the game?
I don't, unless it's something we want to start here.
Well, for the Gazette and the CF, I do. Maybe we can put them on the panel if it's amenable to and allowed. But I predicted 24-21 Iowa State. Do you know how much confidence I had in that prediction?
100? That's the right answer.
25%, maybe? You just don't know, right? But I just knew it was going to be a coin flip game, I think. As game one, the two teams, how much they respect each other, how much they play alike in a lot of ways, the type of culture they want to exude and obviously marinate in. So that's what I figured. But did I think, I'd hit 24-21? I've had seasons where I think I've missed 7 by 3 points. So, but I feel pretty good about hitting it.
Good work. Yeah. I was off. I did not hit it.
I don't know if I want to join the pick panel where Rob Gray's picking games right the whole time. That doesn't sound.
Oh, it'll
making
change.
Us all
it'll
look
change.
bad.
It'll change. No question.
So I think the way we were going to close this today, we're just going to do a little roundtable on some of our favorite Dublin or Ireland memories, trips. Do you guys have any other football topics before we want to close out with that?
You want to start?
Why would Rocco Becht have been yelling at Matt Campbell to score at the end of the game? I don't know. I mean, maybe Rocco hadn't quite done the math right. We talk about Campbell moments in this press conference.
To be fair, I wasn't doing the math right either.
Me neither. Yeah.
I thought
I was. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be right. I'm wrong many times, but I was 120 left. I'm thinking 40-second.
I was thinking they were going to have to
run out. They wouldn't rewind the clock.
Run out for 10 seconds or something like that. So once I discovered that it truly was over, maybe it was just, let's get Carson his touchdown. But they made the right call not doing it. Where they did not make the right call, and I'm glad this did not matter. And I don't know how much this was talked about because I couldn't access Twitter, but it was the end of the other half, the end of the first half.
Yeah. I was very surprised. Yeah.
I don't know why Iowa State had anybody back there fielding the punt because the two scenarios were... Well,
could have taken time.
I thought the right move was just go to half. They weren't scoring, but to have Flora back there, I know you have ultimate confidence in him fielding the punt, but the only outcomes were either he successfully fair catches and there's like 3 seconds left to take a knee, or he muffs and K-State gets the ball that was mind-boggling to me. I realized that I never really talked about that after the game because I successfully blocked that out of my memory. That was a tense 20 seconds right there.
Yeah, I do remember when I asked Rocco that, he did kind of say like, laughed a little bit and said, I think he put it a little bit, blew it a little bit out of proportion. I just gave him the option, I think was what I heard from him there. Yeah. I think it was like, but I think Campbell was just in fun unplugged mode. So he was like, I got my quarterback over here yelling at me to score, all that kind of stuff. But that was our favorite off-field memory. Did we want to save that for another time or go another couple minutes?
No, let's do it. Let's talk Dublin. Rob, you were there the longest.
And so mostly outside of Dublin.
So I think it's right if you share. It doesn't have to be Dublin. You can just your favorite part of the entire trip over to Ireland.
Yeah, I'll be quick because I had full 2 weeks with my daughter, 2 of them travel days. So we got a car and went through County Mayo, most coastline of any county in Ireland. So I saw some amazing cliffs, ancient sites. Those are all over the country, including not too far from Dublin and Newgrange. So my favorite part was that whole thing, having a car, adjusting to driving it that way as a 56-year-old who's been driving the other way, the right way we say, the wrong way they say, for a long time, and just seeing all the sites and coming across some things too. That's one of the best things about travel, discovering things that weren't on your list. Things like this, you kind of have, when you were renting a car, you have to kind of have a list, but that was the most fun thing for me.
Yeah, those taxi drivers were a different breed down there. I was impressed with that. Other than hanging out with 9 different Brends at an establishment, I think my favorite thing was probably playing some golf in Howth. The locals kind of pronounced it a different way.
Hoth.
There we go.
I was saying Howth.
It looks like Howth. I think it's Hoth.
I got to take a train out there. Guys, I'd never been on a train before, so that was kind of a cool experience to buy a ticket and get on a train. Mm-hmm. And then when I got out to play at the European Club, I didn't see any other golfers out there the whole day.
You didn't have anyone to play with?
I wanted to get paired up with some Irish locals. Yeah. I think they would have made it a lot of fun. But I think the second best option was, hey, just go out there, yeah, whenever you're ready, go and play. And I wasn't rushed at all.
That's wild.
It was just a beautiful experience, man. And, it was awesome. I wrote, for anybody curious, 18 thoughts from 18 holes from an Iowan's first trip overseas. So you can check that out in the Quad City Times. Nice. 18 different thoughts. Yeah.
I think this is my favorite vacation I've ever taken. It's either that or Hawaii. Both were pretty incredible for different reasons, but I just absolutely loved that country. I was able to do so many cool things that I'll never forget. I do think my favorite part though was going to Houth and walking
both.
Walking.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Walking along the cliffs
on the Slancha.
Walking along the cliffs, oceanside. It was probably like a 2-hour hike. I actually ended up running into Rob right after. Yeah. I'd been at probably 18,000 steps. I stopped for some frozen custard after my mom hopped in a taxi because I even considered hopping in a taxi too, but she was hurting a little bit. But I walked all the way back to the coastline by myself and ran into Rob at the bus stop. But if you haven't been to Dublin or Ireland, I would highly recommend it. Because even Dublin itself, I had a blast just walking into a pub, having one or two, and then walking down the block, and you can find another completely unique local pub. It was a great experience. And then the game going the way it did definitely helps bring the trip from an A to an A+, but it was a great trip.
Agreed.
If you're going to go to Ireland, do both. Do Dublin, do the city thing, and then get out of Dublin. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, I think my family, we did probably 3.5, 4 days in Dublin, 2 days outside. And I think that was a decent balance. I'd love to go back do what Rob and C-Dub did.
10 outside, 3, and even 3 did the Hoth. Went to Malahide Castle, one of the most haunted. Sent a pic to Williams on Twitter. The guy showed me.
He doesn't need any more.
He doesn't even, but he didn't even respond. It must have been so underwhelming for Williams to actually see photographic evidence of a haunted castle. But yeah, it just so many things to do that take you. Gray Swords down south at the end of one of the public. There's lots of really cool. Great. I might probably mess that up. There's just a lot of places you shoot from Dublin. Wicklow Mountains right by. That can make you feel like, hey, we got the big city here, but boom, here we are out just in the middle of the wilderness or by incredible seaside like Hoth.
Awesome. Well, I think that's going to do it for the first episode of the Beat Reporters. We'll listen back, see what went well, see what we liked, and we're going to just keep doing this all season long. I think the goal is to do this Wednesdays, have it come out Thursdays, and we'll talk a lot about the nerdy stuff that happens on Tuesday at the press conferences, because we all enjoy that. And we thank anyone who tuned in and listened to this first show. Thanks to Kelderman Manufacturing for sponsoring, and we'll be back next week on the Cyclone Fanatic Podcast Network.